Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome both of these dashing journalists. So, when I was in the Indian Express, both of them were young journalists. Veena was a sub editor who was so quiet that I wouldn't recognize her voice if she talked. She was that quiet and very sincere and determined. And Anuradha was such a simple, sweet, and hardworking, dedicated journalist, always passionate about the health sector. And she kind of pioneered the health journalism, I would say, in Pune and perhaps India. And that's how health journalism became such a huge thing in the newspapers. So let's start off. Now that they are such a accomplished ladies. So we start with the first question that journalism is like literature in a hurry. You just race every day to deadlines. You don't have time to ponder, and then suddenly you take another route and write a book. That's really fascinating. So, Veena, let me start with you first. So, she runs a newspaper abroad. And what made you take a turn, sit back, and actually pen a book? And same question to Anuradha later.
Yeah. So, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Vinita, for moderating this panel. It's so wonderful to see you after, I don't know, 30 years?
Yes.
30 years, yes. So, let me begin by talking a little bit about my book. So imagine a young woman from a small coastal town in India. It's the turn of the century, it's 2000 AD. And she travels 9,000 miles to the southern United States. She lands at the international airport in Atlanta. She does not know a soul, of course. And the only person she knows is a stranger she's met a few times. And that stranger is her husband. So the story, this woman, her name is Tara, and so Purple Lotus is the story of Tara, and it follows her story as she lands at the airport, and it follows her through the 7 years of her life in Atlanta. So Tara is trapped in an abusive marriage. She's lonely, she's isolated, there's emotional abuse, and which later escalates to physical abuse. But she also, she is also trapped in another sense because she comes from a very patriarchal family. She's pressurized to work harder to make her marriage work, to try harder to keep her husband happy. And so this is the story of Tara and how she finds the strength to eventually realize the value of self-worth. So that's the story. Yes. And why did I feel like I had to write this story? It's because I come from a patriarchal family. I'm an immigrant like Tara who moved to the United States around the turn of the century. And I was also this vulnerable, fearful, like Vinita said, I was so quiet she could barely hear me speak, So I was this woman myself. And so it was very important for me to write about this. And secondly, I'm a journalist by day. And in my journalism work, we report on so many instances of domestic abuse. Just this, in the couple of months, I personally have reported about domestic deaths, shooting deaths of women by their husbands. Nobody talks about this. I'm talking from the lens of the Indian American community because that's where I have lived for the last quarter century. Nobody talks about this. We are the model minority. Everything is, swept under the rug. And so I wanted to normalize conversations around this topic. And that's the reason I thought it was very, very necessary to talk about this topic.
That's really, really fascinating and amazing. And yeah, these things need to be put in black and white. So Anuradha, you tell me, yours is not a fiction, but yours is a real story of an inspiring person. So tell us about it and how you got it there to
Sure.
write it. Yeah.
First of all, thank you so much, Vinita, and the organizers at Pune International Literature Festival for this wonderful opportunity. I'm really excited to be here, especially. I want to thank you so much, all of you all, for coming, because this is my debut book. And the very fact that Lieutenant General Madhuri Kanetkar and Lieutenant General Rajiv Kanetkar are here. So, guys, please, a huge round of applause for them, because, it takes, taking time out and coming here for this, I'm really grateful, ma'am. Vinita, we're journalists, okay? And since we meet, and this kind of space has given us such a lot of opportunity to interact with diverse people. And in the health sector, I have met so many people as a young kid, as a young journalist. So it would MK Bhan or a lot of people who would come to BJ Medical College, AFMC, and NCL, Nari. And you kind of go attend workshops, conferences, and some of the things, they stay with you. So COVID has been a brutal pandemic, and obviously all of us have had terrible experiences. However, like ma'am says, opportunity does come by, and one came by when the publisher reached out to me. I had absolutely no clue to write anything, but the publisher wanted me to write something related to the COVID pandemic. And I'm like, yeah, there's a fatigue. Enough about COVID. Let's do something on like positive stuff and, inspirational kind of stuff, because that's the way, I also try to take my stories in the paper. And it just naturally came about Dr. Soumya Swaminathan. The very fact that she's a woman, she's a doctor, she is a researcher, a scientist, she's the second DG ICMR, she's the first scientist, chief scientist at WHO, and the very fact that she's led teams, etc. I thought story to banta hai. So, we have done a couple of interviews. And one more thing that I remember is, the passion with which she used to speak about tuberculosis. So I had gone to this one session in BJ Medical College. It was an oration. And that time she was talking about undernutrition. And that is so important to reduce the incidence of TB. And look at the rations trial today. The TB incidence is going down. So, like I said, these things stay with you. So when the publisher said, I said, why not Dr. Soumya Swaminathan? So they agreed. But okay, there's a little secret. They didn't want me to write the book. They wanted ma'am to write the book, Dr. Swaminathan. Oh God, how much we pestered her. But I think
They wanted you to be the ghost writer.
No, I wouldn't agree. I said it has to be Soumya and Anuradha.
Right.
Yeah, Vinita, we also like our bylines. But ma'am, I think, was on her, last leg, and she was leaving the WHO, and I don't think she was very interested in writing the book. But yes, having said that, when we convinced her, she gave access to her family, to her friends. And the most remarkable part of the journey was meeting Dr. M.S. Swaminathan when I went to Chennai. And I met the grand old man. And I'm sure all of you all know about him. And so the baby came out. So it was a 9-month pregnancy. And the delivery was done. Finished.
Oh, that's just amazing. And I can see all the passion,
My first
expression. Yeah, and to write on such a wonderful woman is just great. So let's get back from the book to journalism, from where you all started. So tell me, journalism has seen so many changes in its landscape, particularly in the last decade or so. But before I ask that, I want you to answer as to what have been your highlights in journalism, some of your momentous milestones, or something that you just remember as very heart-tugging, or something very beautiful. So just go ahead and express your journey of journalism and how it has changed, and how it has changed over the decades. I would say that you were there 3-4 decades. Both of you, yeah, you can start.
I can start. So I'm once again going to speak from the lens of the Indian American community.
Of course, yeah.
So I launched NRI Pulse in 2006 on a whim. Just sitting in my living room, I thought this very glamorous idea came into my mind, and I said, why not, And just to go back a little bit, when I moved to the United States, I was told that you cannot get a job as a journalist in mainstream media without a US degree. And I was not at a place where I could go back to university. And so I worked for a couple of community publications. And then this idea came to me in 2006. Why not launch a newspaper? And so I did. I went to some of the biggest Indian-owned publications, and I tried to sell them my very glamorous idea. And 5 of them agreed to advertise. And that's how NRI Pulse was born.
Amazing. That's a great achievement. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it, but of course I did not know what I was getting into. It wasn't always the glamorous mission I thought it would be. There was so many challenges, especially during the recession in 2008, when, it was very, very difficult to sustain the newspaper. And that's when I started to do, a lot of the work myself, including distributing newspaper. We had over 100 locations. Our newspaper used to be kept in shelves in Indian stores, temples, offices, such businesses. And so I used to go traversing hundreds of miles across the city,
Wow.
delivering the paper myself,
Really?
news gathering, pretty much everything. Anyway, the bad times did not last. Things got better. And I think the highlight for me was in 2010, when the Limca Book of Records recognized me as the first Indian woman to publish and edit a newspaper outside India. Thank you. And that, I think, validated my efforts at running a quality publication. And then suddenly people were like, oh, NRI Pulse, she's in the Limca book, so let's support the paper. And that's how it grew. So 20 years later, we're still standing. And we are a group of very small, it's a small group of women. It's a completely women-run publication. And we are growing, and we're a very popular name in the United States.
So is it still print, or is it?
The pandemic was one more big challenge, and that's when we decided to focus our energies on on growing the digital publication. So the last print edition came out in 2021.
Yeah, so hers is a very interesting community newspaper, and you got to know about Indians there.
Throughout the
I
US.
keep tracking her on the Twitter and keep reading very interesting stories of success and horror also.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Anuradha?
For me, I am still learning. Every day is a new day for me. And that's the reason I'm in this profession, because the next day is so exciting. I mean, there is probably a little bit of fatigue because, you tend to do the same stories over and over again. But this field is dynamic. And if there is a change from the typewriters, computers, to now tweeting on social media, if anything happens, we are writing on social media, elections. So that's the change. But I feel the responsibility, the onus is more on us, national newspapers like us, to kind of prove the credibility of what is there out there. And the book has made me realize, when Dr. Swaminathan talks about misinformation, there's a lot of misinformation and there's a lot of fake kind of data. So, it's more important for us journalists to actually, in fact, it's very, very sad. Today, if I'm allowed to say, the index, the Free Press Index shows that India is slipping. And that is a concern for journalists like us. And I think that being in this profession for so many years, I think it's relevant and more important that people look up to us and start trusting us again. That,
Yes.
okay, what has come in the paper is correct. And I'm going to believe that. And I think that is the huge change. As for Vinita, I'm still learning. And there have been moments where, like the award where I went to Araku, and I saw these tribal women, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so fortunate where I am. But, the women who stay there and who struggle and, to narrate their stories in the newspaper and bring them alive, I think I'm fortunate to do that. And, I would kind of, another instance is, the heartfelt stories. So, like during the COVID pandemic, my dad was in and out of ICU, my mom was not well. And somewhere I had to put pen to paper. So I just did it for the editorial pages. It came as an op-ed. I had so much of mail in my inbox because everybody was going through that, and it resonated with the people. So that's what journalism sometimes helps. And, bringing these stories, I think, is is a passion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I quickly also add
Sure,
that
sure.
for me the major difference, I'm an old school journalist. I believe that the job of a journalist is to just present two sides of a story. But I think these days publications are like more left leaning or right leaning. There's no balance. And that's
I just want to kind of say a bit.
digress.
It's like
Okay.
we still have the five W's and one H, where, what, wherever,
Yeah.
and how. But yes, I agree that we have become more explanatory, but the investigation is still there. Investigation journalism is not died.
And I think more it's happening in the electronic media. And yeah, like what Anuradha says is right, that it's really a challenge to be a genuine journalist these days. Because I just give an example when I was doing the investigations for Dow Chemicals, which was happening in Pune. So everybody thought that I had an agenda and some anti-Dow person was like paying me money. So these things like just crop up and they like suspect you even if you're doing a true story.
They
and
think
that-
you have an agenda.
Yes, and that really pains you so much. But that's what is happening today. In fact, Shekhar Gupta just spoke on, my 10 years of corporate citizen day before yesterday. And the moment, like there was 50% of the crowd was so happy with him. The other 50% was really, like kind of slinging mud at him because there is just no balance left and there's so much of divisiveness, I'm sorry to say, that has entered our homes, our families, our hearts, our country.
Our WhatsApp
And-
groups.
and WhatsApp groups like are the biggest poison on earth, and people just get addicted to that. That's really very sad. But I'm sure this is a passing phase because journalism in India cannot die and be whipped like this and brutally, yes, be killed, and it has to come back, and it shall, because the reader is not being, or the viewer is not being given a chance to see the other side. It's that kind of a control. But it will happen because the YouTube channels are just fascinating, where they tell you the true stories, and they are getting like really so popular. Anyway, before I come back to a couple of more questions, and we'll throw it out open to the audience. So you mentioned about, like journalism being a thankless job. So I remember that I was a young journalist in the Indian Express, and one of my stories, like that time there was no emails, a lot of readers called up that it was a great story and all. And I was so excited and so happy. So Mr. Kardare, who was a resident editor, he just called me in and he said, okay, so why are you like so excited about? I said, no, my story, like it's got so many calls and this and that. So he said, just sit down for 2 minutes. And he said that, the newspaper, it becomes a raddi after 24 hours. So your story has already become a raddi, and you have to, go on proving yourself. Like you said, you cannot stop. You have to prove even even if you're 30 years in journalism.
There's the electronic media and the difference over the years.
Yes.
So these stories are there. It's there in the cloud, and people are reading, and they come back, they read and come back. So that's
Absolutely.
the positive part of journalism
Yes.
and electronic journalism
Yeah.
also.
So now coming to the gender part of it, the women in journalism. I mean, like in Maharashtra, like we've really been lucky, or maybe in Pune, where we really had, I had no experience of bias. But generally, what do you think about women in journalism? You can talk for the USA, and do you think there is a need of more women to be in journalism to make it more sensitive, to bring out issues that really matter, and whether the percentage of women is really less?
Yeah, I believe in the US, the only 8% of print newsrooms are made up of women of color. It's that low, just 8%. But over the past 5 years or so, I see a lot more diversity, a lot more brown faces like mine on television. And I think, for instance, if there's a story about India, you see an Indian name, Indian byline. So I'm very hopeful that things are changing now, and there's more diversity and inclusion. And coming to my story, I don't think people doubted my ability as a journalist, but they did doubt my ability as a businesswoman. They said an RI Pulse would fold up in a year's time. And there were some wealthy people who thought they could just buy out an RI Pulse because I'm just this weak woman with no deep pockets. But of course, that did not happen. So we're still standing.
That's amazing, your determination. Yeah.
Thank you.
So on the similar lines, Vinita, I would like to just say, I won't take names here, but I was an intern, and one of the top bosses said, so apart from looking very pretty, what else do you do?
Yeah.
And
I
I
swear.
may not understand too much at that point of time, but something little rankled. I'm like, yes, thank you for calling me pretty, but I do a lot. And over the years, I just feel that yes, women are there in journalism, that's fine. But it's the men who need to be sensitized. Today, when I got a Ladli Media Award, out of 100, 80 were women.
Right.
Just barely some percentage men. Why can't men win the Ladli Media Award to talk about gender sensitivity? They should be there. So I just feel that yes, men or women, whoever's good, they should be there. It doesn't matter. It's not necessary that a woman is equally as good as a guy. Okay, and the man can be much much better. I feel, but if they are sensitized to write about and just not write about crime, ye rape hua, ye hua,
Clinical, yeah.
Men should write about
yeah,
women's
so
issues.
if they are also gender sensitized, which I think is happening actually,
Yeah.
and I think women also there, so let's give them a chance.
Yeah, so actually, yeah, it is very patriarchal, in the media. And in a session that was recently, I had it in my magazine event. So Samrat Fadnas, who's the editor of Sakar, he did mention that since there's such a low percentage of women, and since men are so not sensitive to stories of women, so it like kind of is very biased. But yeah, I agree. I hope it becomes better because we need to tell stories, and in the same vein, we need to tell stories about men too. If you see the incident of Atul Subhash, which is like really like heart wrenching. So I think both genders of the society just need to talk about themselves to bring out those inner, injustices, domestic violence, sarcasm that has become a part of us. I think journalism will become better. And like you said, when I was a young journalist, when I used to, interview government officers, they would like first say ki, तुम्ही काय सारस्वत आहात का? का देशमुख म्हणजे मराठा आहात का? And somebody would say, तुमचं कॉम्प्लेक्शन असं वाटत नाही तुम्ही मराठा आहात. That kind of a thing. And the biggest joke was when I did my Dow Chemicals story and won that award, Chameli Devi Jain award. So when lady, she called me, I won't mention the Sangatna, she called me and said that, तुम्ही इतकं मोठं काम केलंय तर आम्हाला तुम्हाला, like you have done such big work, so we want to give you an award because in our community, no Maratha girl has done such big work. So I told her, like, I'm so sorry to talk about caste, but I'm not a Maratha. So she never called me and I never got that award. Yeah, so that's the way they get into women's, personal things and including their caste. So, the last question is like, you all have still so much in you all in journalism. So, 5 years down the line, like, how do you see yourself, both of you? So, Veena, you could start. Or maybe we'll ask Anuradha to start
Yeah,
first.
Aiming for the Pulitzer. But I want to be stronger. I want to be fitter because I am going on that side of the 50s where I feel elderly women, I think the government needs to do something for senior citizens. And I want to write a lot on that. But I want to take this opportunity to thank a very dear, 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 dear person is my husband who's filming us.
Yes,
And
of course.
I'm going to take this opportunity to tell him that we have to write a book together. And he's going to do it, and I'm going to convince him. So 5 years, that is my plan.
Super, super, super. Big hand to both of them in advance. Yes.
Well, I'm working on another book. It's set in rural Georgia. It's also about an immigrant woman, but
Wow.
the issues are different. It's about casual racism in southern United States, and I'm hoping that in the next 5 years it will see the light of day because I've not had very much time to work on it. It's a slow process, and secondly, like Anuradha said, I want to have better work-life balance. Travel the world, tick off my bucket list, and generally just people ask me, what my biggest accomplishment is in life, and I think it is to just be able to sit here and talk today, because I was this vulnerable, very, very shy, very timid, very fearful person, and to be to just be comfortable in my skin, to not feel like an outsider constantly. That is my accomplishment.
I'm going to throw the question back to you because I'm a journalist. What are you going to do 5 years from now?
So, even in fact, before you asked, I decided to answer. So, yeah, so you know what? I have a lot of pain in my heart these days. And I just feel that today we are in social media and journalists have no more chip on the shoulder. Because, you know, you can go around as the Times of India, Indian Express journalist, but the person sitting right there as a common citizen is completely empowered because he's got Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, everything in his hand, you know. And I just feel that we are wasting a lot of time in toxicity and hate. And so, in fact, an idea has just come to me last week that I want to start a YouTube channel called Open Your Eyes. You know, why open your eyes? Because as citizens also, we do not know our own laws. Like, I know that maids steal your jewelry, you will not report to the police. You will see a crime, you'll see an accident. I know, like, my husband's friend had taught his children, if you meet with an accident, just move away from that place so that you are not in fault. So everybody is trying to save themselves by being selfish, by being illegal, and by not caring for the larger picture, which is your society. So I want to tell people, and I want to do this beyond journalism, that, you know, you have to leave this planet not only for yourselves, but your children and grandchildren. So you have to fight for what? You don't have to go to the streets. You just have on the tip of your finger your mobile. You love environment, please fight for it through that. You see some injustice, please, discrimination, social discrimination, please fight for it. So journalists could like kind of guide people, you know, they could be their eyes as to how they can do it, because people don't know how to do it. And they are full of fear. And rightly so, they don't want to get into police. And so can I give one example before we throw it open? Or rather two examples. So what happened is that my daughter had bought a new Kia car and we were at the null stop signal. And from behind, a big Maruti van just hit us on the side. So my daughter immediately got up and asked for his license, and he did not have a license. She clicked the photograph of the number plate, and then he was like, don't worry, after the green signal, we will meet there at the roadside. And of course, he ran off. And she was so aghast. She said, Mama, what to do? I said, nothing. Here's the Prabhat Police Chowki. Let's just get in there. So we went there and I told the constable, this is the number. Find out that owner, call him up and bring him here. Okay, so he like hesitated, but because I was so aggressive, he went and called. And then he's telling me, nahi tena veer nahi hai, ratri etil. I said, what? I said, it's a job of a police. He must have reached Chaturshringi. You just, please, I'll make a big scene. You damn get him here. So then finally, you know, he called him owner and all. And then this young boy came with his mother. And then she started crying that COVID मध्ये आमचं खूप नुकसान झालंय, taxi service मध्ये we cannot afford it and all that. But I was in no mood to hear these emotions. So what I said, okay, I went to the police officers, sub-inspector had come by that time, and I told him that, you know, please take down this complaint. So he said, nahi, he ka non-cognizable offense hai. That time there's no point and you will be just running to the court. So he said that better that you settle. I said, okay, if the lawmakers are not siding me, then somebody who's wrong has to be punished. So I went and told him that, I told my daughter to call up how much the charges would be from Kia. So then she found out it's 10,000. So I said, please give rupees 10,000, otherwise you're not giving you the keys. So he said, nahi, 2 दिवसांनी 2,000 दिले तर चालतील का? I said, no, you have to give it now and in half an hour. So he quietly went, he gave the 10,000 and we started the car and walked away. I'm sorry to say that this is illegal in one sense, that I kind of, you know, took money from him, but what can I do? But if more and more people start doing this, then people like him, this guy had never driven a car. He gave in, I mean, नुसतं इथंच जातो काहीतरी packet टाकायला. So at least those people will know that they cannot, like, they need to be afraid of people. Today, they are only afraid of the police, and the police ko 500 rupees diya, they are okay. But when will the time come when all the wrongdoers will be afraid of us, the people? And that is what I want to do for the next 5 years. Open your eyes. Yeah. Yeah. So, is there time for question answer? Oh, yeah. So, I will throw the floor open for questions to these elegant two ladies.
My question is
No, I think could you just pass on this?
with a cup of coffee.
No, others won't be
Open
able
the
to.
newspaper. What we would like to read about is something good, something inspiring, or something which will make us feel that this is a worthwhile day. We do not want to hear politicians squabbling over petty issues, which is most disgusting. We trust them with leadership and they come to us with excuses for being idiots. So, can we please change this and have Open Your Heart page where we tell people the good souls who are also there in this world. So don't think that everything is black. There are shades of gray and white. You said this about somebody who banged your car and refused to pay. I have another experience. Some years back, I parked in Deccan Gymkhana, very crowded area. Somebody had hit the car while I had gone. There was a note saying that this is my number. It happened because I was in an emergency. So please ring me up and I'll pay for the damage. There are two sides to every story.
I think it was more a comment and an observation which ma'am has made and which is very, very pertinent, I think, today. And of course, at the newspapers that I represent, we definitely do come out with very good stories, ma'am. And definitely this will be played back because this is also being recorded. So this will also go back to my editors and this definitely will be taken up. Thank you so much for your comment.
So unfortunately, let me quickly add, unfortunately what happens is it's always the bad news that gets the most hits, right? The most, and that's what propels more publications to focus on that. But at NRI at the publication I run, we are very, very cognizant of the fact that, there's, like you said, there are shades of gray. It's not all black, and we try to, have a balance of bad news and good news. And we have a lot of columns that, book columns, or lots of interviews of successful people, triumphant people, which provides a balance to content.
Yeah, of course, I agree on this potpourri. You must have good stories and bad stories. But my argument is that, a newspaper is like it's like a scanner of the society, right? Like, suppose if I go to the doctor with a sore throat and he tells me you have beautiful eyes and a lovely nose, I would like really get angry and think it's worthless. Similarly, if a newspaper is not going to tell you what is bad in the society, because you have to speak truth to the power. I mean, our tax money is being spent and that damn people in the power need to do something about that. So I always give this thing about the doctor and the journalist. Sorry to be so negative. Yes, anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question. So my question is about, if you notice in the back, right, you see AI prominently present, right? So you are all great journalists and you are, somewhere towards the middle of your career. But if you look at the way AI is progressing these days, right? I mean, the talk is that in the near future, journalists are not needed anymore, right? And we are at what you call the infancy of AI, creating a lot of articles on its own. So in fact, a lot of websites actually have AI published articles, so there is no need of a journalist anymore. So a decade from now, how do you think that journalist jobs will still be around? What would the role of a journalist be when AI is doing a much superior job to a human being?
Can I take that question?
Yes, of course.
So why are we only talking about journalism, sir?
Yeah.
Look at medicine.
Absolutely.
Today, doctors are using AI,
Yeah.
to assist them.
Exactly.
in surgeries, in whatever fields. So for journalism, it is a challenge because I know as a writer, as a reporter, my language may not be the greatest, right? But I know my facts, which the AI doesn't. Probably it will pick it up. I don't know. But if somewhere, and this is happening across, this is a concern which a lot of newspapers are facing, not just my paper, and this is being widely debated. We have not only over here in the BBC, everywhere, this is the talk. But I don't think, it is a challenge, but I don't think we are going to die out. So we will probably take it as an assistant kind of, role, but who knows? Just may something else might develop.
Yeah. So
I
I
just want to
believe.
add a
Yeah,
bit.
yeah.
No, I want to add more to this. See, when you say that journalists are going to die, what does the AI or the chat GPT do? When you suppose a journalist wants to write that article, that chat GPT gets it from the Google stuff, right? And much of the Google stuff is got copyright. You can't hear? Yeah. So much of the Google stuff is copyrighted. So if I do a article with chat GPT, and there are sentences which resemble a publication that has published it, and there's a software which they can locate it, then we would get a defamation, whatever the case we would get. So it's not easy for a journalist to blindly do the. Yes, you want to answer? Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a question also, but before that, I would like to address what this gentleman has raised. Vinita and Anuradha, I've worked with you in the Indian Express so long ago. So,
Yeah, she was also another fascinating journalist, very dedicated.
who transitioned to digital content eventually. So
Yeah.
today, I think I'm in a better position to answer your question
Right.
because digital content does not have the kind of sensitivity or the power that journalistic articles do. However, even having said that, while we are using AI even in digital content, there is a concept called human in the loop. Because a human in the loop has to be there to curate the content, to assess its accuracy, all of that. And when it comes to journalism, there is something known as deeper sentiment analysis, which obviously an AI tool cannot do. We are talking about live reporting, we're talking about observation and then drawing some conclusions from it. AI at this point will only draw from its own LLM, its large language model, and only do that. So I don't think journalism doesn't definitely look like it's going to get affected. Maybe digital content, the area where I work, it definitely is already getting impacted, but it is all under the realm of cobot. It's collaboration between human and AI. There is nothing really about one replacing the other. It's about working hand in hand to enhance the field as it is. So that was, I would just answer that, and I don't think journalists are definitely, they're not going out of fashion anytime soon. And my question...
That's a very nice answer.
Thank you. Yeah. I just had
Madhuri ji-
one question to, all three of you actually. I've seen both of you. Vinita, it's so refreshing to hear you speak. But does your being a woman actually end up being a differentiator in the way you report? And if yes, then what's the differentiator aspect?
Yeah, yes, because of the sensitivity.
More than that. If
And-
there's anything else.
No, a woman has got a womb and she brings out a child and she gives the child everything with unconditional expecting from the child. And so when she works in journalism or elsewhere, she is giving unconditional love and dedication to it. I know we are. Yeah. So after they do, Madhuri ji
I
wants to
just
ask one
give
question.
one, it's more a comment. Firstly, I'd like to compliment both the authors for going off the beaten track. I mean, you are doing something and you've taken, gone beyond that and done something new, which requires a lot of guts and determination. So my compliments to that. As far as journalism and this thing, I think with both the comments that came in, firstly, AI I don't think is artificial, it's just assisted intelligence. And the second thing is, I think since this session was when women take charge, I think it's even more important what you described in, whether it's Twitter or this, there's so much information out there that I think when women will have to take charge, differentiate, sift out the chaff from the grain and present facts for the truth. And women can do it better because they have better communication skills and sensitivities. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we just have a young man So, okay, one last question.
Thank you for this, and it was very interesting to hear you, all three of you. I'll keep it short. Three questions. One, uh, activism versus journalism. Do you think there is a line, and should journalists be activists? That's one. Second, in connection to AI, many of us would have read 1984, and there we had machines writing novels and fiction and sometimes reports also. Do you think that era is already here? So one of the issues with AI is AI tends to hallucinate. Sometimes journalists hallucinate too if one reads their reports. Do you think there is a, do you think Orwellian era is already there here? And the third point was around press freedom index. Do you think this is actually because times are going bad? Because they are always going bad. When I was younger, times were going bad. Even now, times are still going bad. Or, or is it also because our maybe voice is not heard? There is a frame where maybe Indian sensitivities also need to be taken care, and that will address this freedom index issue. Thank you.
You know, you said a lot of things, but please, I mean, you're insulting journalists by saying they're hallucinating. Yeah, I mean, poor things. These days, they are like battered by the establishment. And if you go to, if you have heard that 48,000 crore rupees advertisements were given for the Indian TV media, especially, and print media together, you know who they are loyal to. So fearless journalists are having a hard time. And yet there are fearless journalists who are sticking out their neck and telling the truth to all of you. And the rest of the questions, please answer. You can add.
Go ahead. I think this you can also answer about activism and journalism.
But yes, absolutely. Activism and journalism can go together. I am a women's rights activist, and I wrote a whole book about it. So it absolutely can coexist. Even in my newspaper, you know, we are always reporting about women's issues. So yeah, that is my take on it.
So most of your questions have already been answered, and thank you for your questions. However, this is actually, we can carry the debate a little later, but I just want to say that there still is a thin line between activism and journalism, right? And activism is, so we don't call ourselves activists, but we have campaigns which we do for the welfare of the citizen. I am a citizen too. So if I find the roads are terrible and there are potholes and there are blessed, all those kind of rada, roda, whatever it is, I am going to take a campaign for my newspaper. We are going to go on the field. We are going to talk to people like you all. And if that makes me an activist, well, yes, fine. But yes, that's a campaign that we do take up in the paper. Thanks.